Welcome to Show-Off Showdown! In this series, the fighters are called Show-Offs, and this is the series for the Show-Off Showdown! Now let's meet the Show-Offs for tonight's showdown, shall we? Now, hold on to your childhoods and get ready for an epic, action-packed, old-school gaming battle unlike any other! That's right, it's the Angry Video Game Nerd versus Abobo! Once the retro rage has been unleashed, there's no reset button, and there's no turning back! Oh, and by the way, here's a special surprise. This will be the very first episode of Show-Off Showdown that features a full-on pre-analysis. Better get yourself some popcorn, cause it's gonna be a long run. Now without further ado, it's time for the Show-Off Showdown pre-analysis.
Before PewDiePie, before gameplay, before the very existence of YouTube itself, there was a nerd. Yes! Ladies and gentlemen, meet James Duncan Rolfe, aka the Angry Video Game Nerd. He's gonna take you back to the past, and we're gonna take him into battle. Now, when you take your very first look at him, he may seem like your average, stereotypical, nostalgic, man-child, alcoholic, angry gamer, but there is much more to this nerd than meets the eye. This nerd is capable of things that no ordinary nerd is capable of, that nobody would think possible. What exactly is this nerd capable of, you ask? Well, let's find out. For starters, you know that old saying from the Matrix, blue pill or red pill? One leads you back to reality, and the other keeps you trapped in fantasy forever? Well, let's just say that metaphorically, the Angry Video Game Nerd has taken both pills at the same time, giving him the ability to simultaneously exist within both reality and fiction at the same time. How is that even logically possible? Well, we may never know. But what we do know is that with the unique abilities like this, the nerd has been able to achieve many incredible feats, which I will start listing right now. The Angry Video Game Nerd has survived playing the worst games known to exist, beat Zelda 2 with the Power Glove, survived encounters with many horror icons such as Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, etc., and even defeated all of them. Once became the Batman, no joke, defeated the Joker, beat a Klingon in hand-to-hand combat, was trained by Ninja Gaiden, sent his sentient kitty to attack the Atari Jaguar, destroyed the creepy head that asked you where you learned to fly, once stole Christmas, just like the Grinch, defeated Ghosts and Goblins in a rather crude RPG-style fight, survived the glitch gremlins reality-distorting effects, went through and escaped hell twice, defeated Rob the Robot in one of the most epic-looking battles in AVGN history, traveled back in time through AVGN history to play crappy Mega Man games, ate his shorts, smashed a window with a newspaper, crashed a bicycle into a Grim Reaper so hard it exploded, became the Great Cornholio, met his past selves and alternate versions of himself, traveled to alternate universes or timelines to uncover the mystery behind his Berenstein or Berenstain Bear's childhood, killed alternate versions of himself to prevent an interdimensional paradox, summoned all the parts of his retro nerd armor in an epic Power Rangers themed fashion only to briefly destroy a small crappy Power Rangers game, got his own video game called Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures, which now has a sequel, AVGN 2 Assimilation, rode a flaming shark with laser eyes through the depths of hell and a Tanuki with a flaming nutsack, defeated Fred defeated Satan himself alongside Super Mega Death Christ, battled against Bugs Bunny and his rival, the Nostalgia Critic, twice. The same Nostalgia Critic who's powerful enough to create nuclear explosions just by screaming, and whose love of Christmas brought upon the apocalypse. And that's just two things the Nostalgia Critic is capable of, but we're not here to talk about him. Let's get back to the nerd. The nerd has even defeated a godlike being known as, well, I can't really pronounce his name.
Death More 6.
Yeah, what he said. Anyway,
Death More 6.
Was said to be the creator of both God and Satan, and yet the nerd defeated him and saved everyone. Not sure if because this god had pathetic durability or the writers were just lazy. Anyway, the nerd defeated this godlike being not once, but twice. Once in his movie and the second time in his game. The nerd also seemingly has fourth wall awareness. Oh, and believe it or not, the Angry Video Game Nerd is actually a fusion of 5 different nerds, each dedicated to a different type of video game system.
Angry Nintendo Nerd, Atari Nerd, Sega Nerd, PlayStation Nerd, Tiger Electronic Wristwatch Game Nerd. Form Angry Video Game Nerd.
So as you can tell, the Angry Video Game Nerd has achieved a lot of very impressive and really awesome feats throughout his series. Now of course, there will be more AVGN episodes coming soon, and the nerd will most likely achieve more new feats in the future. For now, I'll say this much, I'm really hoping that one day the nerd will review the bad Dragon Ball Z games and become so angry he goes Super Saiyan. Now that would be awesome. By the way, I drew this picture myself. Anyway, let's discuss some of the nerd's other important properties, including strength, speed, durability, powers and abilities, and arsenal. Let's start off with strength. Now while the nerd may seem wimpy, he actually possesses incredible superhuman strength. One time, he was able to lift a 1 million ton AC adapter off the ground for about a few seconds before his arm gave in and he dropped it.
Even the AC adapter weighs 1 million tons.
Not only that, but the nerd even has the strength and power to actually damage and harm the likes of Bugs Bunny. The same Bugs Bunny who possesses a virtually unstoppable Toon Force and all the powers of Golden Age and post-crisis Superman. How is this even possible? Well, theoretically, the nerd must have some sort of special superpower that allows him to penetrate and break through the invisible Toon Force barrier that shields Bugs Bunny from any actual physical harm, allowing the nerd to legitimately damage and injure Bugs Bunny. Then again, it's just a theory. Also, believe it or not, just like Bugs Bunny, the nerd actually possesses the powers of Superman, which leads me to speed. Not only is the nerd fast enough to dodge bullets, lasers, and lightning, but he possesses Superman's flight, which he used to fly all the way to the sun in only 16 seconds. The sun is about 93 million miles away from Earth, which means the nerd was traveling at nearly 21 billion miles per hour. Not to mention, the nerd can survive the vacuum of space, which leads me to durability. Not only can the nerd survive the vacuum of space and the heat of the sun, but he can also tank quite a beating from the likes of Rob the Robot, Bugs Bunny, and the Nostalgia Critic, can casually tank explosions, lasers, and lightning, could scream and says the F word for an undetermined amount of time without getting exhausted, and he can even endure the insane speed of Big Rigs, which has the speed to escape reality. Now that's pretty intense. Now let's discuss the nerd's weapons, powers, and abilities. The nerd is capable of performing Mortal Kombat fatalities and Street Fighter moves such as the Shoryuken, Hadouken, and Sonic Boom, can transport himself in and out of video games at will, can shoot lasers out of his eyes and manipulate ice, and he can literally drop F-bombs by shouting the F word and bombs come out of his mouth. Now the nerd carries a lot of weapons in his arsenal, including the Nintendo Zapper and Super Scope, which can both shoot lasers, the Konami Laser Scope, which he can use to shoot lasers just by shouting fire or curse words, beer bottles, which he can throw and refuel himself with, the U-Force, which he can use to perform telekinetic attacks, the Odyssey Gun, which works as a very powerful shotgun, and even a lightsaber. But one of the nerd's most powerful weapons is the Power Glove. It's so bad. Literally. Now, as bad as this accessory may be, it sure is powerful. It's the same Power Glove he used to beat Zelda 2 with little effort, and he used it to defeat powerful enemies such as Freddy Krueger. Now, when the nerd puts all of these retro game accessories together, he forms the Nerd Armor, making him a virtually unstoppable retro tech powerhouse. He wore this armor on multiple rare occasions, such as his battle with Satan, Rob, Nostalgia Critic, once in his Power Rangers episode, and even in his video games. Now, as much of an angry retro powerhouse the nerd is, he does have his weaknesses. His anger problems can sometimes get him into trouble, being an alcoholic, LJN, has questionable combat experience, and while he can definitely tank blunt force and fiery explosive attacks, he has been shown to be vulnerable to razor-sharp weapons and objects. However, despite his flaws, I think we can all agree that this is one really angry video game nerd who you do not want to mess with.
You bet your ass.
In the year 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System was created. It brought much joy to people all around the world. But one NES character never got a chance to share his story. Until now. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the biggest, baddest brute in 8-bit history, the destroyer of the Nintendo Entertainment System. His name is Abobo. Abobo was originally an antagonist in the classic game Double Dragon, but now he has obtained an all-new role as the main protagonist in the ultimate tribute to the NES, also known as Abobo's Big Adventure, which in my opinion is one of the greatest games of all time, and I highly recommend playing it. Trust me, you'll love it. Anyway, Abobo's story is where his son Abobo has been kidnapped, and in order to get him back, Abobo must battle his way through the entire world of NES in order to save his son. During his big adventure, Abobo has obtained many new weapons, powers, and abilities, and he has achieved many great feats along the way, which I will start listing right now. Abobo has battled his way through some of the greatest classic NES games of all time, destroyed pretty much the entire NES library, was trained by Doc Louise from Punch-Out, mated with a mermaid and made baby Merbobos, was given a piece of the Triforce by Zelda herself, and then he ate it because he thought it was a piece of pie. Also, Abobo has defeated many powerful and iconic classic NES characters, including the likes of Donkey Kong, Shooter Gaben, Bubbleman, Carnob, Jaws, a giant shark with a laser named Big Daddy, Urban Champ, Dig Dug, Aquamentus, the Old Man who then became the Old Giant, Princess Zelda, Lakitu, Balloon Fighter, Grim Reaper, Death from Castlevania, Bub, the intimidating Amazon, Dr. Wily, a robotic duplicate of himself named Robo-Bobo, who then transformed into Mecha Bobo, Rambo, Toxic Crusader, Robocop, Jason Voorhees, sounds familiar, right? A Naked Guy, Kid Icarus, Ryu from Ninja Gaiden, Krang, a fusion of Krang and Kirby, Link, Samus Aran, the Shredder, Captain N, Scrooge McDuck, and a colossal apocalyptic Kirby who is powerful enough to consume every single character in the entire NES library. I don't know about you, but I think this version of Kirby can definitely beat Majin Buu. Come at me, bro. Now, spoiler alert, the final boss of the game is Little Mac from Punch-Out, who then powered himself up and became Big Mac. Big Mac is easily one of the toughest opponents that Abobo has ever faced, but Abobo has eventually managed to defeat him and save his son, Aboboy. After that, Abobo and his son Aboboy decide to kill pretty much every last remaining NES character in the library by tearing them all limb from limb. However, in the end, major spoiler alert, it turns out that everything in Abobo's big adventure was all just a dream. Or was it? Was it really a dream? Or was it actually a memory of his dark past? You know how people who fought in wars often have flashbacks and dreams about the wars they fought in the past? Well, Abobo has clearly been through more than enough to experience the exact same sort of things. Anyway, as you can tell, Abobo has achieved many incredible feats throughout his game, and as you would have guessed, achieving feats like these would require a lot of cunning, strength, durability, and power, which I will discuss right now. First off, let's discuss strength. As you can tell by Abobo's massive muscular structure, he's pretty strong. How strong is he, you may ask? Well, Abobo is strong enough to casually tear people limb from limb, rip off and eat a child's head, can throw human bodies so hard they explode, can take a crap so hard it lifts him off the toilet, can break his way out of metal Mario pipes, killed Samus Aran by stomping her head into the ground, the same Samus who has superhuman durability and can survive being pummeled by building-sized monsters, and yet Abobo stomped her so hard she died. Strong enough to beat Donkey Kong to death with his bare hands, the same Donkey Kong who is strong enough to punch a small moon out of orbit into the Earth. And during his wrestling match with the Amazon, Abobo jumped up all the way to the moon with just his leg strength while carrying the Amazon, and as soon as he re-entered the atmosphere, a fiery aura formed around Abobo as he fell back down to Earth, and as soon as he landed on the Earth's surface, Abobo suplexed the Amazon so hard it destroyed an entire city. Also, Abobo's son Aboboy is pretty strong too. Aboboy is strong enough to lift a T-Rex and shake it so hard its flesh gets removed from its body, rip off the Shredder's arm and drink his blood, killed Scrooge McDuck by crushing his head, and Scrooge McDuck is pretty tough, so that's really saying something. And Aboboy is even strong enough to break the Earth's crust just by bear hugging it. If Abobo's son Aboboy is that strong, then just imagine how strong his father Abobo is. So as you can tell, those muscles aren't just for show. Now while speed isn't Abobo's strongest suit, he makes up for it with durability. Abobo is durable enough to tank beatings, bullets, lasers, and explosions, survive falls from great heights without a scratch, can survive the vacuum of space and re-entering the atmosphere, and can tank a city-leveling explosion like I mentioned earlier. So Abobo is pretty durable, but of course he does have his defined physical limits, and he can be put down with enough force. Now believe it or not, Abobo has the special power to automatically adapt to any game or environment that he's in. By doing this, Abobo has gained many new weapons, powers, and abilities throughout his game, including Link's Sworded Shield, a piece of beef which is surprisingly stronger than Link's sword, Mega Man's armor and Mega Buster, a machine gun from Contra, a pair of balloons which can use to fly and maneuver around in space, Yoshi's tongue, which Abobo can use to grab enemies and pull them into his mouth and then spit them out at other enemies just like Yoshi, can use the Konami code to revive himself, only once though, and he also gained the ability to fire Kamehamehas, lasers out of his fists after eating a piece of the Triforce. Not to mention, when Abobo mated with Annie the Mermaid, she gave birth to 3 Mermaid Abobo hybrids, which Abobo then used as shields to protect himself. Not only is that extreme child abuse, but it's also incredibly ironic, because Abobo was on a quest to save his own son. It's like he's saying,
"Ah, screw you, I'm saving my real kid. You little freaks don't count."
Okay, I'm starting to get a little off topic again. Sorry about that. Now, one of Abobo's most powerful weapons is, you've guessed it, the Power Glove. The Power Glove that Abobo wielded is so strong and powerful that Abobo used it to ultimately end Little Mac by punching him so hard that Abobo decapitated his head and then sent it flying across the entire NES library, and then finished by landing on a Mario flagpole. Now that's an epic retro finish. After that, Abobo used the Power Glove to save his son Abobo and then destroy every single NES character in sight alongside his son. Now finally, Abobo's most effective and powerful attacks are known as his full rage moves. If Abobo lands enough good hits on his opponents without getting hit too many times himself, he will enter full rage mode and then perform a massive destructive powerful attack that instantly wipes out all enemies in sight. Abobo has many different styled full rage moves, each depending on exactly which game he's in. In the world of Double Dragon, Abobo's full rage is known as the Rocky Rage, where he makes huge boulders rain from the sky. In the Mario world, he can create a massive typhoon or whirlpool. In the Zelda world, he can perform a magically powerful Super Slash. In outer space, he can perform the Death Blossom and fire lasers and rockets everywhere. In the pro wrestling ring, he can summon famous WWE wrestlers out of nowhere, which he used to help him take down the Amazon. In the Mega Man world, he could charge up and fire a huge Mega Blast from his Mega Buster. In the world of Contra, he could teleport into a military helicopter and literally bombard the whole area. And the Punch-Out boxing ring, he can perform powerful boxing moves similar to the ones in the Punch-Out video game. No ordinary enemy has ever been able to survive any of these full rage attacks, although most of the bosses in Abobo's Big Adventure are strong enough to survive them. Now of course, despite being a big bad retro rage-filled powerhouse, Abobo isn't perfect and he does have quite a few explosive weaknesses. Abobo sorely lacks a battle strategy and he always relies on brawn over brain, and he most likely just punches first and doesn't ask questions later. Also, while Abobo has proven to be quite durable, he has shown to have very defined physical limits. Not only can he be killed with enough force, but he can also be killed by many things such as being decapitated underwater, getting eaten by a giant fish, getting disintegrated by giant laser beams coming out of nowhere, getting eaten alive by a giant Kirby, having his body dissolved in a pool of acid, and getting sawed in half with a big buzzsaw, which indicates that just like the nerd, Abobo's body is vulnerable to razor-sharp weapons and objects. However, I think Abobo's biggest weakness might be the fact that Abobo is, well, kind of an idiot. I mean, Abobo ate a piece of the Triforce because he thought it was a piece of pie. Sure, it probably made him stronger, but still, that's a pretty stupid thing to do. Also, Abobo can be manipulated or tricked into dangerous situations, such as when an intimidating yet smart villain named the Amazon began toying around with Abobo and mocking his lack of intelligence, which Abobo really didn't take well. However, despite his flaws, I think we can all agree that Abobo, destroyer of the NES, is still the biggest, baddest brute in 8-bit history. Mess with him, and his next victim could be you.
This is it, folks. It's time for the ultimate retro gaming showdown. Who will win and who will have their game over? It's time to find out right now. Now without further ado, it's time for the Show-Off to Showdown!
Get ready for the next battle. Fight!
I got Dark Castle on C, G.
Welp, game over!
Now let's discuss how and why the angry video game nerd wins this ultimate hardcore retro showdown. Now I've already given you a pre-analysis on both characters, so let's keep things simple and discuss who has the advantages in the following categories, including skill and experience, strength, speed, durability, arsenal, etc. Let's start off with who is more skilled and experienced. While it is possible that Abobo may be more skilled in martial arts, however, the nerd is still quite capable in combat, and he actually has a lot more experience than Abobo. Let me put it to you this way. Abobo lives in the world of NES, so despite his primitive intelligence, he is quite experienced with the NES library of games. However, the nerd has a lot more experience in not only the NES library of games, but the nerd is also very experienced with the libraries of many other game systems as well, including the Super NES, the Sega Genesis, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Atari, etc. So the nerd is definitely a lot more knowledgeable and experienced when it comes to video games. Not to mention, despite being an alcoholic, the nerd is easily smarter than Abobo, no question, which can give the nerd quite an advantage. Now let's discuss strength. Now despite Abobo having a much larger muscular structure than the nerd, I think it's safe to say that the nerd is technically stronger than Abobo. Abobo may have the strength to destroy an entire city and break the Earth's crust, while on the other hand, the nerd has the strength and power to actually harm Toon Force users like Bugs Bunny. Now that's pretty hard to compete with if you ask me. Now let's discuss speed. Now this is no contest. Both characters may be fast enough to dodge bullets and lasers. However, the nerd is clearly far faster, as he can move much faster than the speed of light, as I mentioned earlier, so the nerd will most likely just speed blitz Abobo. Now let's discuss durability. Now this category is a little more even. The nerd and Abobo are both durable enough to take massive beatings, bullets, lasers, and explosions. They can both survive the vacuum of space, and they both have been shown to be vulnerable to razor-sharp weapons and objects. However, I think it's safe to say that the nerd can definitely take more punishment than Abobo. In fact, after everything the nerd has faced, the nerd is durable enough to survive most, if not all, of Abobo's full rage attacks, assuming Abobo will even be able to use them, because the nerd will most likely be landing so many hits on Abobo that he probably won't even get a chance to use any of his full rage moves. Now let's discuss weapons, powers, and abilities. Now both characters have a lot of powerful weapons in their arsenal, mostly long-range weaponry, and one of the most powerful weapons in both of their arsenals is the Power Glove, which is ironically the exact same bad Nintendo accessory. So I think it's safe to say that the nerd and Abobo are relatively even when it comes to weaponry. However, the nerd has plenty of powers and abilities that he possesses naturally that Abobo does not. Now it is true that the nerd can shoot lasers from his eyes and Abobo can shoot lasers from his hands, so they're pretty much even on that part. However, the nerd has plenty of other natural powers and abilities, including F-bombs, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter attacks, ice manipulation, which he can use to freeze Abobo, and more. I think that's more than enough to counter Abobo's Yoshi tongue if you ask me. So I think it's safe to say that the nerd has more ways to kill Abobo than Abobo has ways to kill the nerd. Not to mention the nerd has beer bottles which he can refuel himself with, so there's that too. Now, there's no doubt that Abobo will definitely put up quite a fight and give the nerd a really good run for his money, but with the nerd having the clear advantages in pretty much every category, I think it's clear who the winner of this game is. So in the end, it was game over for Abobo. The winner of this battle is the angry video game nerd.
Next time on Show-Off Showdown!
This is going to be quite the epic battle, my old nemesis.
Got any ideas for Show-Off Showdown? Then let me know in the comments below, and hopefully, I just might do them. Now stay tuned for the next episode of Show Off Showdown!